Hey everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Little Shop of Nerds. I'm Julia.
Mike, what's up?
If you guys hear this weird sound, it's my fan on my laptop. It's going crazy again. We'll get it fixed eventually. So, last week's hint was Just Breathe.
Yes, that means we're going to be talking about the greatest Cinderella film ever, starring Drew Barrymore and Angelica Houston, known as Ever After.
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite Cinderella stories growing up as a child. This was what, 1998? I think is when it came out.
Something like that.
So, I mean, at that point I was nearly a teen, but I've always, to be honest, I've always kind of liked princess stories. So,
yeah.
You know, so, if you are not familiar with Ever After, y'all need to go watch it. It's on
Disney Plus. It's Disney Plus. Go and stop, watch it, listen to us, go watch it, and come back here.
Yeah, like it's there are some cringy parts in the movie, but overall it is a very good movie.
Yeah.
If any of you are familiar with Two and a Half Men, the woman who plays Rose,
one of the stepsisters.
yeah, she plays the good stepsister, I should say.
Yeah, she wasn't really that mean. She was just like, she was also getting picked on.
Yeah, she was kind of like she wasn't mean to what was her name, Danielle?
Danielle.
She wasn't necessarily mean to Danielle, but she didn't really help her out a whole lot either. But she was definitely the good one out of the two, and we'll get into why that is here when we start. So, just like every other Cinderella story, it starts off with a little girl and her father.
Oh wait, before that, there's two guys, I think, who are the brother Grimms.
Mm-hmm.
The brother Grimms. They go to a queen and.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they go to a queen and we think she's a queen.
She's like a queen or a princess, whatever it was. But they were speculating how they wrote the Cinderella story, because they say she was based on a real person. They're trying to figure out if the shoe was made out of animal or glass or whatever.
Yeah, because they said that some legends say that it was made out of fur, others said glass, but they weren't quite certain. So then she had actually had the shoe brought out, which was glass, I think.
I don't think it was glass. I think it was just regular fabric.
I think it was like some sort of like a fabric, maybe also some glass at the, for the sole and everything and the heel. And then they're like, "Oh, so it's true." And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Now let me tell you my story." And then it starts off basically like every other Cinderella story about just a father and his daughter. Father, remarries to the stepmother. The stepmother has two daughters, and it all just kind of like starts off normal for a change. And then father dies.
Pretty much. And one thing about Danielle, you could tell she's been alone with her father long. I wouldn't say tomboyish.
She's definitely tomboyish.
But she was also getting in a rough house with her best friend, who's also an artist.
Gustav.
And she also knows how to take care of the farm and everything.
Yeah. So she was definitely a tomboy.
Oh, definitely.
Because when we meet her, they're trying to make her look presentable to receive the Baroness and her daughters. And Gustav was like, "You look like a girl." And she's like, "I am a girl." She's like, "I can still whip you." And then they go out and she does show up with some mud on her because she was playing with Gustav, and he was like, I was hoping to, or they were, it was some sort of mud. It might have been, it might have been manure too. But yeah, he was like, her father's like, oh, I was hoping to present a daughter, but I guess you'll do. And you can tell that the stepmother was just like, oh, this is gross.
And the Baroness is played by
Angelica
Houston.
Yeah, if you don't know who that is,
Morticia.
Where have you been? And it's Morticia Addams from the Addams Family.
And I have to say, I'm wondering if she had to wear a corset in that movie.
I mean, it's possible.
But like you can tell in Never After, she didn't have to. But in the movie, in the Addams Family, you just kind of wondered, was it a corset or did she really lose all that weight to fit in that dress?
I don't know, Mike.
Then again, they say if you wear black, it does make you look baggy. Your clothes doesn't look baggy.
Okay, Mike.
But either way, right? Yes, she's the Baroness, and pretty much you can tell she's going to be the pretty much a pain in the ass throughout the whole movie.
She really was. So, her father brought her. Okay, so her father, Danielle's father, had like an extensive library, and he would always bring back, from what I'm understanding, is he always brings back a book from his travels. So he did bring back this one book called Utopia, and he was like, "Hey, we'll start reading this when I come back from my business trip." And she's like, "Well, how long are you going to be gone?" And I think he said 2 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks, and she said no, 1. He's like 2, and then they did that whole
rock paper scissors,
and he says fine, 1.
Yeah, and so then I think they were planning on reading the book when he came back. The day that he was leaving to go on this trip, he had probably a heart attack, and he fell off his horse in front of everybody, and he passed away. And with this is both Danielle and the Baroness ran out to his body. And I think what really solidified it was the fact that her father was more concerned with Danielle than he was with his new wife.
Yeah, because the new wife can just leave and start anew, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, with Danielle, she might be by herself, she might not have anyone, or she might be with someone who's going to maybe abuse her. Okay, I think the dad knew she was going to be one of those snobs who ain't going to do shit.
Well, no, I don't think he knew that, because, I mean, he was willing to marry her and bring her into the family as a mother figure for Danielle.
I don't know, but she was a little snobby in the first place.
Well, I mean, she is a baroness, so...
Yeah, but sometimes baroness don't make a lot of money either. I know certain times there's different types of barons that were rich and some that were not.
Well, we don't really know. So then it cuts to, I think, like 10 years later, and you see Danielle sleeping by the hearth. Like Cinderella.
I thought it was a fireplace.
Mike. Okay, Mike. That little spot where the fire is called a hearth.
Yeah.
How did you not know that?
To me, hey, you think I know anything about fireplace, architectural stuff?
I mean, I don't either, but I know that was a hearth.
Well, I didn't, because I don't know all that stuff. I didn't know that shit.
Oh my god, okay, so anyway, she's laying in the hearth, sleeping by the hearth, with the last book that her father brought back for her. And she wakes up, starts taking care of the farm. that's when we realized that she had been treated like a servant pretty much since her father had passed away.
Yeah, and that's not cool. But you know what? I think it's just funny out the whole effing film. The Baroness keeps saying, "Where's the stuff?" And I'm like, let me guess. You sold it, dumbass.
Yeah, she kept complaining that a lot of things kept disappearing, and we will get into why they were disappearing later, Mike. So, yeah, she's basically been treated like a servant, taking care of the household. She sold, we find out that the Baroness had either fired or sold all of their servants. And so there was only 2 servants left, which were a couple of old ladies that had been with the family since Danielle was young. And one of the servants that they had actually sold recently was the husband of one of the older women. And when Danielle was out and about, she sees someone trying to steal her father's horse. And turns out that it's the prince, because he's trying to get away from an arranged marriage that to the Spanish princess that he doesn't want to do. Like, he doesn't want this arranged marriage. He escapes, which you see all this in the film. You see him escaping and everything. And he steals Danielle's father's horse. She throws an apple, I think, at his head, knocks him off the horse. And she's like, "How dare you steal my horse?" And she's like, she's just going off on him. And then he stands up and she realizes that he's the prince. And she's like, "I'm sorry." She's like, "I will accept any punishment, even if it's death." And he says something, and then he dumps, I think, 20 francs on her, because this all takes place in France. And he drops 20 francs on her, and takes off with the horse.
Yeah, and he does. And once he takes off, he sees a bunch of people getting robbed from their coaches. And one of the passengers is Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah. He was actually on the way to the palace for the marriage announcement or whatever of the prince. Yep. So, and then of course, the guardsmen catch up with the prince at that point. They have to take him back. So, while this is all going on, Danielle is also like, "Hey," she goes home and she's like, "I have these 20 francs." She tells the 2 servants, "I have the 20 francs. I'm going to go get your husband back." And they're like super excited, but they didn't want the Baroness to know that she had that money, because if she had known that she had that money, she would have taken it.
Oh, yeah, she would.
So, while she goes off to do something, the Baroness goes off to do something. I think they were buying a brooch that they really couldn't afford. And Danielle puts on a nice dress. And at this point, Danielle is pretty much convinced that she is a servant. Because she says, "I shouldn't be wearing clothes like this because it is above my station." And which meant that it's above her status as a servant. And apparently, I think it's punishable by death. If a servant tries to mimic like an aristocrat, like a baroness or baron or whatever. But she was doing it. I mean, technically, if you think about it, if her father was, I am going to assume that her father was probably a baron, because he had such a wealthy, large farm. Unless he was just very...
Maybe he was like a baron plus a farmer, maybe plus a merchant. Because think, if he's a merchant, he maybe has to go to places to set up shop, and maybe that's it. But
I mean, he didn't. When he left to go on that trip, all he had was his horse.
Well,
and like a few things. He didn't have like any. Didn't look like he had any goods or anything like that.
Maybe he's trying to set up the shops before he can bring in the goods.
Maybe. But yeah, we don't know what her father. We know that her father was extremely wealthy. But we're not quite sure what her father was doing. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he wasn't a baron, and he was pretty high up there.
Yep.
Without actually being a baron. So she puts on this nice, noble-ish dress, and she goes to the market to save the old man. And the guy who she was trying to haggle with, I guess, wouldn't let him go, scream or yelled at her, and then the prince had shown up and he's like, what's going on here? And then she explained what was going on, and she had like this little debate, I guess, on ethics and stuff like that.
Well, truth be told, that old man didn't deserve to be in jail. It was the Baroness who pretty much put him in there.
Yeah, she had sold him to pay off her debts.
Yeah, and which is kind of dumb, by the way, but that she bought him and talked to the prince, bought him, came back. And here's the thing, when she came back, the Baroness got mad because the prince came back to return the horse, and they say she got mad because, how can you do that because he was a prince and all that? And I'm like, why did you tell us? I'm like, cool your britches. It's not even your freaking business what goes on.
So then when after she goes on her little tirade, she looks over and she sees the old man, and she's like, one of the daughters, and I think it was the really snobby blonde-haired daughter, she's like, what is he doing here? And then he goes, oh, I paid off my debt, my lady. And she's like, oh, okay, we'll just go catch a chicken or something. And then, he leaves. But yeah, it wasn't his debt, it was the Baroness's debt.
Oh yeah, and throughout the film you see she gets like information from the prince and everything from one of the guards who looked very familiar. If you guys seen the first Captain America film, he's like the Red Skull henchman, but he was in other films. And he wasn't in Harry Potter, I know that. Mm-hmm. But I know he was in this film. He was in, I think he guested on Doctor Who for a couple of episodes, and he was also in the new Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah. So we don't see that until that she was getting information from him until much later.
Oh, yeah.
So then the next time that Danielle sees the prince is she's out swimming, and she also gave the prince her mother's name.
Oh yeah.
So she didn't, and she said that her mother was a countess. So I'm wondering if her father was a count, actually.
It could have been anything. And the prince was with Leonardo da Vinci. And she was actually out. Danielle was actually out there searching for truffles because she had a pig with her.
Did she have a pig with her?
Yeah, because that's one of the things you have to pay attention before she went into the lake. Is she was searching for truffles because I read that some pigs can sniff out truffles, and that's why truffles are so rare.
In Stardew Valley, you can get a pig, and the pig can find truffles.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why truffles are so rare and expensive.
Because you need a pig.
You need not just a pig, and because truffles grow somewhere, like it could be hard to find a truffle. Even with the pig, sometimes you can come up short with a truffle.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're so expensive, because they're rare to find.
Okay. I'm learning something new every day.
What do you think? What do you think people ask for truffles on expensive restaurants? You know, the ones that cost like $100 to get.
I would like to be able to eat at a restaurant where a plate costs $100.
Not me. I want to go to a place that has a good burger.
I mean, you can get a good burger at a really expensive restaurant with truffles on it.
Well, I don't care. I don't want to.
You could probably get one made completely out of truffles.
In my opinion, I don't care for fancy meals. But anyways, back to the thing, right? She's swimming in the lake. Leonardo, because if you guys studied on Leonardo da Vinci in high school, he was like an inventor too. So he had these little water shoes that help him glide on the water, and I'm like, they look like little boats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm wondering if he was trying to fit water skis.
Possibly. Oh, we forgot to mention something. When we first met Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah.
one of the bandits ran off with something of his.
Oh yes, it was a painting.
It was a painting, and the painting was of the Mona Lisa. So, well, yeah, it seemed like the prince. After that, the prince and Leonardo became quite close.
Yep.
And so then he was like, they, see each other again. Danielle and the prince do, and you can tell at this point, he's kind of into her because she's challenging him, and I think he kind of likes that she challenged him.
Yeah, and he does, and she does, and you can tell throughout the whole movie they expand on the relationship. The mother, the Baroness, trying to get her claws into the palace.
Yeah.
And it's just more trying to get there, and the one thing what got me is where I'll tell this later, but I think further on, the Baroness is asking why is stuff missing. Then later on, it's not before that.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So there was actually a ball, I think, that they were holding in honor of the prince's marriage to the Spanish princess.
Yes.
And Danielle came in because her daughter, the Baroness's daughter, was complaining about how she didn't really have anything nice to wear. Or no, it was a ball, and the prince was going to announce who he was going to choose to marry, whether it was going to be the Spanish princess or someone of his choosing, because he wanted to marry someone of his choosing. And his father agreed to do that. And then it turned out, so then the blonde-haired daughter, Marguerite, was complaining about how she didn't have anything nice to wear to the ball. So then her mother was like, oh no, we do have something. She takes him up to this room and opens up a chest, and inside is Danielle's mother's wedding dress with her shoes.
Yep.
Which is the shoes that we see at the beginning of the film. And Danielle comes in as they're holding up the dress or something. They're looking at the dress, and Danielle's like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, nothing. We're just taking out the dress to air it out for you so you can go to the ball with us. And she's like, oh, you want me to go? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, oh, that's very nice. And Danielle's like, oh, it's so cool. They want me to go to the ball with them. So then, throughout the film, Danielle continues to meet with the prince. And, one day they go to the, and while this is going on, Marguerite is still trying to get into the palace, get her claws into the prince so she can,
be
marry
wealthy.
him. Yeah, pretty much. And then one day, the prince and Danielle decide that they're going to go to a monastery because they had a huge library. And so they go. Their wagon breaks down on the way home. Danielle's like, oh shit, I gotta get home, like, now. They get attacked by, in the movie, they're called gypsies. So they get attacked by what they call gypsies. And they, which, I mean, it takes place in France. And The Hunchback of Notre Dame also took place in France, so kind of makes sense.
Yes, and we have a little sword fight with them, and with the leader, and she said, Danielle said, I want this and that, and he's like, you know what? If you can find something that you can carry out of here, I'll let you go.
It was, she could have anything that she could carry, he would let her go. So she goes over and she picks up the prince and starts to walk off with him. And she's not wearing a dress either. She's just wearing her undergarments. And he's like, oh no, come back. He's like, I'll give you a horse. And they end up staying the night out with them.
With them,
with them, yeah.
In a nice cave. No, if you can fix it up and everything, it could be a good tavern.
Yeah. So she comes back the next morning, and the Baroness, before she went to bed at night, she goes, I want you to tell me as soon as Danielle comes home. And Danielle had come home, I think, like, late at night or early in the morning or whatever. And she was still sleeping, and they go up to wake her up. And they kind of, like, hit her with a broom. And they're like, are you ill? And she was like, no. And she's like, well, what about our breakfast? And she's like, you've got 2 hands. You can make it yourself. So then they make Jacqueline, which is the one that played Rose in 2.5 Men. They made her go down and boil water for their eggs or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. They were going to make her make breakfast. And she was like, I knew this was going to happen. She's like, I knew I was going to become the new Danielle and stuff. So, later on that day.
Yeah, I think so.
Because of what she had done with, waking up late, staying out all night and everything, they decided she walks in and sees Marguerite with her dress and her shoes and everything. And she's like, what's going on? She's like, oh, well, you're not going to go now because of that little display that you pulled.
And they took her dress.
Yeah, she said something to her mother. I think something about, your mom's dead, I think. And then Danielle went over, they took her dress. Danielle went over, punched her in the face.
Which she deserves. And Danielle took the shoes back from her. But here's the thing. Marguerite took the book that her father gave her, hold over the fireplace. Right? And she's like, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to drop it. I'm like, bad mistake. She's just going to drop it in no matter what. Mm. And she just, like, gives it. And I'm like, idiot!
Yeah, and the Baroness said, it's your mother's shoes or your father's book. Which is it? And Danielle handed over the shoes, and then Marguerite still threw the book into the fire.
Yeah, see, in my opinion, you never give anything back if they stole spite. This is how you do it. You both, like, say, she put the book in her hand, and she puts the hand on the shoe, then let go. That's how you do it. Mm-hmm. Don't do this whole give first, and I'm like,
yeah. So, when they had been out all night, the prince and Danielle, when they were out all night, they had shared their first kiss, and he had asked to see her again later on that night.
Oh yeah.
So, Danielle does end up getting lashes, and Jacqueline does help her take care of her lashes. And then she does end up going and meeting the prince, and she was going to break it off. She was going to tell the prince
the truth.
The truth to her identity at that point.
And here's the thing. Like, here's what happened, right? The dress and the shoes get stolen. They don't know. They accuse Danielle, the Baroness and Margaret accuse Danielle taking the dress back. But here's the thing. It wasn't her. It was the servants. But one thing. The Baroness locked her in some kind of cellar or something. So she doesn't escape. So what they do is...
Well, no, because before that, she met up with the prince. She was going to tell him her true identity. He hugs her and he kisses her, and she's crying because, her back is hurting. So he wouldn't listen to her, and she's like, I gotta go. And then the guy that was the guard or whatever that was helping the Baroness gave the Baroness a really expensive piece of jewelry from the Queen that he had stolen and gave it to them because they were waiting for the Queen to be out and about walking, and then she was going to take the piece and be like, hey, I'm sorry, but you dropped this piece back there. And they're like, oh, I didn't even realize I had put it on. She said, thank you, and invited her out for tea. Then they find out that she's talking about the Countess Nicole de Lacre or something like that.
Either way.
And then the Baroness is like, oh, this person? And the Queen is like, yeah, I was just thinking that it was a figment of my son's imagination. And turned out that it was, I think that might have been why she got the lashes.
That and, it was before they meet the Queen, having that little structure.
Yeah, well, no, the thing where she found the piece of jewelry was before.
That was before.
And then she got punched in the face because then they asked about it. And she's like, oh, I saved a child from a rampaging horse or something like that.
That was after. But yes. And they realized, and the Baroness knew her true identity.
That's when they locked her up. And then she couldn't go to the ball.
And the servants, Marjorie, they're the Baroness, what's her name? Marguerite, and the other one,
Jacqueline.
One thing about Jacqueline, she was kind of just there, just eating, didn't give a shit. I'm like that. I'm going to be like that. If I'm at a party, I'm going to be like, I'm at the snack table or I'm petting a dog.
Yeah.
Because, I don't give a shit about people. I'm like, it's like, hey, Mike, how's it going? Oh, it's Jake. Hey, buddy. Yeah. He's like, I love dogs. I'm like, give him a belly rub. Because that's one thing about me is I'm not a guy who's going to care about people. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to care about the dog. But either way, yes. Yeah. You see Jacqueline. She's eating the food. You see the prince's guard / friend kind of flirting with her.
Yeah, because they're actually both wearing horse masks. And because Jacqueline wanted to be the peacock, but of course they're not going to let her be the peacock. They're going to let Marguerite be the peacock. Anyway, so Danielle is locked up, and when they had accused her of taking the dress, she goes, they're probably with the tapestries, and all she's naming all of this stuff that's come up missing.
Which is repossessed.
She sold them.
Yeah, well, that's
and we'll get into who in just a minute.
Yeah.
You do meet this person earlier on in the film, because he wants to get with Danielle.
Which... He kind of, how his character and his face, it does.
Well, I mean, he does say that he is twice her age.
Yeah, it's just, not just that, it's just the whole demeanor plus the age plus the look of his face. You kind of tell he's like a slime ball.
Yeah, because, I mean, Danielle has to be at least 18.
At least. But,
that's the youngest I'm going to say that she is.
But besides that,
And with him being twice her age.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But besides that, they were having fun. Then, the servants went to go find Leonardo da Vinci. Since he's a master craftsman and stuff, they go. And here's the thing, they can't get the lock open. So, this is what Leonardo da Vinci did. He just takes the hinges off, and he's like, "Whoa, that was great, and you're a genius." He's like, "Yeah, I'll be the man," and this is my favorite line he ever says. Mm-hmm. "I'll be the man going down in history who opens a door."
Yeah. So he ends up he made Danielle some wings and stuff like that
for her
dress, and she goes to the ball, and he's the prince is really excited because he's like, hey, see, and this is the thing, like, because when they went to see, when they had tea with the queen, they had told her that Nicole was actually set to be married to a Belgian, and he didn't want to believe it, but he also invited the gypsies to the ball, so because they turned out to be pretty friendly.
Yeah,
by the time after they spent that night together.
Yeah, and once she gets there, Danielle tries to tell her true identity and say, "No, I'm not getting married," but really tried. Then her mom, what was it, the queen that I don't know.
No, it was the Baroness had stepped out, realized who it was, ripped the wings off of Danielle's dress, and exposed her for who she was.
And he gets mad. The prince gets mad, running away because she lied to him. But if you look at the queen, I think she's like looking at her son. I don't think she's like mad that his son got lied to. I think she's mad, like, had that disappointing look, like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Go after her, you idiot.
Yeah.
And Leonardo da Vinci comes, like, Danielle's running. She's like, she misses the shoe. Leo picks it up, goes to the prince. He's like, why you're not going after her? She lied to me. He's like, yeah, she's lied just so she can protect you and other stuff. He's like, it's my prince. And I'm like, if you think that's a bunch of horse shit.
Yeah.
And he says, and he's like, and this is how I think ends with Leo's like, if that's what you think, you don't deserve her.
And then he puts the shoe down and walks away.
Like, in one way, Leo was giving him the big giant middle finger if you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying.
Yeah, and it's raining and everything. So then I think it's the next day. You see Danielle going around, like, collecting firewood or something like that. And the Baroness is just, like, coming out and she's talking to her. And then that's when Danielle was like, have you ever seen me as a daughter? And I can't remember exactly what she said, but she basically essentially told Danielle that she was just kind of like a burden to her.
Yeah, and here's the thing. All of that, the guy who, they brought all the tapestry, everything back. And here's the thing, the only way they were getting all that stuff back if they were selling to the freaking creepy guy.
Yeah, so what she had done was she had sold all of their stuff to the creepy guy, and then she was exchanging all of that stuff for Danielle, because she's like, before you came in and ruined everything, the prince was going to choose Marguerite to marry. And we can't, when the prince comes, we can't have him sitting, he can't be thinking that we're paupers or whatever. And so she didn't need Danielle. She also didn't want Danielle around distracting the prince either.
Yep.
So she sold him to the creepy guy, and the creepy guy is like, hey, you can marry me, and, I'll take care of you and all that, because he's an extremely wealthy man. Like, I mean, he was a creep.
But I think he also runs a prison too.
Possibly.
But either way, yeah, he was a creep. He takes her away, and then we got a thing with the prince getting married to a Spanish princess. But here's the thing. It was hard for me not to try to laugh when the princess was laughing. Not laughing, but crying. It was just like...
I mean, yeah, it was kind of funny.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't tell if she's like, I know actors, they fake cry, but I can't tell if she's like... Because, like, when actors fake cry, they can really actually mean it. This one, I felt like she was not needed, but I'm like, I'm like trying not to laugh. I'm like.
Yeah, so the Spanish princess was actually in love with someone else.
And when the prince saw him, and she's like,
she's speaking in Spanish, so I don't know exactly what she was saying.
And he just lifts the veil and be like, just
yeah,
go.
He gave her like a kiss on the cheek and let her go, and then he ran off.
And the Spanish king and queen got really pissed at each other, and the king and the queen of the prince was like, I thought I had problems.
Yeah, they were laughing at the Spanish king and queen, and I think it was because it might have been the Spanish queen was willing to let her daughter marry who she wanted, but the father was like no, or it could have been the other way around.
It could be anyway, either way,
or it could have been something else. We don't know.
Yeah, and the prince wanted to go find Danielle, but one thing he doesn't. But he was stopped by Jacqueline.
Jacqueline.
Tell what she did, but she said, "Don't tell anyone I told you. Don't tell the Baroness, because in one way, Jacqueline would have also been in trouble with her mother.
Yeah.
So they get, but before the prince gets there with his men, we see the little conflict with Danielle and the other dude,
and she was able to free herself. Because she was wearing irons, which if you don't know what irons are, they're shackles that were on her feet. Because apparently she had tried to run. And he was like, oh, I do hate seeing you in irons. And he's like, but, you tried to run. And he is definitely, trying to get into her pants. He does try to kiss her. And she had grabbed a sword and, cut his cheek.
It was a dagger, then it was a sword.
Yeah, and she was like, she told him, she goes, my father was an expert swordsman. If you don't give me the key or something, I will cut you from navel to nose. And he, after several moments, he handed her the key and said, your freedom, my lady. And then she was able to free herself. So by the time that the prince got there to rescue her, she had already freed herself.
And this is one thing I kind of like, right? And she didn't need a guy to free her. She just needed to do herself. But here's the thing. They keep saying it was Frozen that was the first one to do that. I'm like, bullshit.
Okay, well, see, Ever After came out in 1998. And Mulan came out in 1998, too.
Yeah, see, it's not the first. It's it's been done the whole time. But Disney keeps saying, oh, it was Frozen that realized that true love you don't need from a guy, just yourself. I'm like, and you could do it yourself. I'm like, Merida did it first. Freaking.
Well, no, Merida came out. Brave came out much later. That was
Brave was first, then Frozen.
Mulan was first.
Oh, yeah, well, first.
Then you had Brave, where she did not have a romantic relationship at all. Though I kind of wanted her to be with the one guy that they all thought was hot, the one that had anger issues. I wanted Merida to be with him, but yes. Beside the point.
Besides that, it was just they keep saying, oh, Disney keeps saying Frozen. It was the first. I'm like, no, it wasn't.
We can always talk about this later.
Yeah, yes, but still, it's one of those things that people keep saying, but no. It was, if you look at Danielle did it first, realize she didn't need a man to save her. So, fuck that shit.
Yeah, so she saved herself. And he comes up to her and he starts apologizing for being, treating her the way that he had. He's like, you were trying to, tell me the truth, and he's like, and I didn't even give you the chance to tell me the truth.
And she's saying, she's like, you said my name, and she said, and because she after she heard him saying Danielle, she's like, oh. But yes, they fall. You get the point. They get back together. The stepmother, Marguerite, gets put on trial. And
no, they didn't get put on trial. Like, okay, so the prince and Danielle got married secretly. And I think the only ones that were actually there were probably Jacqueline, because I think Jacqueline was basically the only one that really knew.
yes.
Because Jacqueline and the prince's guard friend dude, they actually ended up together.
Which is kind of weird. It's like, but then again, they were side characters, so it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay.
And so, anyways, the guard dude shows up and he was like, "Hey, the prince or the queen, the king and queen require your presence," and he's like, "And they want you to arrive in style." So they are like, "Oh," so they go and they get dressed in like the finest outfit that they have, and they all show up, and they start reaming into the Baroness. She's like, "Did you or did you not lie to the Queen of France?" And she's like, "What?" And so she looked over at Jacqueline for help or whatever because they're getting, reamed. And she's like, "Hey, I'm just here for the food." And which is basically what her mom said to her before they went to the ball was, "You're just going for the food." So then they were going to put her and Marguerite onto a boat going to
America.
To America.
Which is like, they kept like, I'm like, okay, I can understand maybe bet, but it's like,
well, they were going to be going as slaves.
Okay, that I understand. Like, I understand if they were slaves, that's really reasonable. Mm-hmm. But like, if you look between like the slavery, I understand. But if you look at America now, it's like,
well, I mean, Australia started off as
it was actually
as convicts.
Yeah, actually, Australia was a prison island. Actually,
yeah. So, but they're like, the only way that we won't send you to America is if someone here can vouch for you. So the Baroness is like looking around for people and no one's vouching. She's like, "Oh, it looks like a lot of people are out of town today." And then Danielle shows up and she's like, "I'll vouch for her." And that's when they realize that she turns around slowly and she sees Danielle. And then everybody was bowing to her, and then the Queen and Marguerite and everything, and Jacqueline bowed at the same time everybody else did. And then Marguerite and the Baroness got down, and then the prince is like, "Oh, Marguerite, I don't think you've met my wife, have you?" And Marguerite's like, "Oh." And so then she says, she gives this spiel like, after today, she does vouch for her. And she's like, she asks for the same courtesy to be given to her stepmother and her stepsister as they had given her. And she goes, "But after today, I won't think of you, but you will think about me every single day."
And
they get put in the laundry room.
Which they deserved.
Yeah. So it was just Marguerite and the Baroness got put into the laundry room. They get into a little tiff, and they both
got into the dye water.
Yeah.
Which they turned their face purple.
Yeah, and then you see the prince and Danielle and Jacqueline and that other guy, the king or the guard dude. They're all kind of like up in like this room because Leonardo had drawn a picture of Danielle as like a late wedding gift.
Yes. And after that, it ends with the brother Grimms leaving the castle. Mm-hmm. The queen saying, it doesn't matter. They did live happily ever after, but it also shows that they lived.
Yeah.
And ends the film, and and I would have to say I give it a 10 out of 10 with a good story, good monologue, especially everything, and with the actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it was like, I mean, it does have its parts that's kind of cheesy, kind of corny. But I mean, it's the late 90s. Blades.
What do you expect?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of my favorites, and I'm going to date myself here, but I did have this movie on VHS.
So long ago. When everything was simpler.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, I probably still have it somewhere here in the apartment as well, because I do have a lot of my, videos, like my VHS tapes and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was, it's one of my, it's one of my favorites. And it was, I probably give it a 10 out of 10 too.
Yeah.
So, and that's Ever After, basically.
Yep. And before we sign out, we want to tell you we are at 19 subscribers. Meaning we only got 1 point that gets us to 80. Down to 80 subscribers. We need that 100 to show our faces. So please give us a like, subscribe, comment, and we will cosplay after we get to the hundreds.
Yeah.
And what is the next week's hint?
I believe there is someone for everyone.
Yes.
So we are continuing our theme for this month of doing romance movies and stuff like that.
Well, since it's February, we just call it the month of love.
Month of love.
Why don't we just call it what it's really called? The month of fucking, pretty much. That's what people are going to do on Valentine's Day.
Not everybody does that on Valentine's Day, Mike.
Oh, betcha they are. Doing the old in, out, in, out.
A little inappropriate for YouTube, don't you think?
Fuck them. They always... they always...
And anyways, so like I said, next week's hint is I believe there is someone for everyone.
Please, yep.
So I'm hoping that you guys have seen this and know what I'm referring to.
And if you are, good. If not, we'll tell you where it is next week.
Yep. Okay, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Yeah.